This isn't a video I ever wanted to make, but I'm afraid it's gone on for far too long for me to keep silent now. For years on end, I've endured abuse and torment, and I've kept silent this whole time. But now that changes. Yes, it's time for me to be brave. Even though this video might get massive hate sent my way, or even death threats, I don't care any longer. The truth must be told. So that is why, today, I will be telling you the truth about the axe. Wow, okay, listening back on that recording, that was way too serious for my usual shenanigans. I need to use one of my go-tos. Okay, let's see here. I'll go that one's good. Okay, we'll go with that one. So, what's the deal with axe players? They, have a good weapon, but they say they don't. Am I right? Okay, as you might have guessed, today I'm going to be breaking down the reasons why I believe that the axe is broken. So without further ado, let's get into reason number 1, the moveset. Now, for the longest time, axe has been recognized by the community as a heavy weapon, which means it's slow but heavy hitting. However, this isn't always the case. Take a look at axe inlight, for example. Now, if you had your eyes open, you'll notice this move is practically instantaneous. It sure doesn't seem like much of a heavy weapon by how quickly Inlight comes out. The other absurdly quick move is D-Light. Just like Inlight, it has a very low amount of startup and produces a pretty large hitbox. These two moves are easily the quickest in Axe's kit, as the rest are much slower and reactable. Does that make them bad? Well, let's look at Sidelight, for example. Yes, it's definitely reactable, but good lord does it have a big hitbox. Not only that, but hitting Sidelight leads into Axe's consistent true combo, which is Sidelight Nair. This combo works at practically every health range, and can often lead into a 3-piece if the opponent's movement is read correctly. Or you just randomly throw out a move that connects, I don't know, how about Recovery in its behemoth flying saucer type hitbox? Regardless of the read, having a true combo like this on Axe is huge. And I'm not just talking about the hitboxes. It's also huge because Axe has the highest damage building in the entire game. When paired with high damage legends such as Taros or Zol, Axe's damage can put someone into kill percent with under 10 hits. But enough about that, we still need to talk about the aerial kit. Nair and Dare on Axe are two of the most abusable moves in this game, especially Dare. If you're below someone with an axe, you best believe you're about to get dared to hell. One of the biggest reasons why Dare is so stupid is because on top of having a large hitbox, part of its hitbox reaches behind the person throwing it out. This hitbox becomes even more egregious if the Dare is grounded. Look at this. Why does that reach so far back? If I had $1 for every time I was hit by that part of the hitbox, I'd probably be able to buy a BMG back from Ubisoft. Although Nair and Dare aren't exactly the fastest moves, it's made up for by their large hitboxes and great damage building. Now we move on to Sair, which is the main kill move of Axe. Admittedly, Sair is definitely slow and reactable, making it difficult to land. That being said, when it does land, this move has got some power. It can also be paired with a read off of moves like Sidelight or Nair to make the killing process easier, but thankfully, the kill confirm of Sidelight into Sair is no longer a true combo. If you weren't around back then, you'll just have to trust me when I say good riddance. Lastly, we have Recovery and Ground Pound. I already talked about Recovery, and shockingly, Ground Pound is much the same in the fact that it has this 360-degree pizza cutter hitbox that can lead to some very early kills if used correctly. Now, for the sake of being objective, I will say that many of Axe's moves have a good amount of recovery frames, which makes them easier to punish on miss. However, the large hitboxes can make it difficult to be within punishing range without getting clipped by part of the hitbox. I'm looking at you, Grounded Dare. Overall, Axe's kit is slow in some places, but fast in others, and also has very large hitboxes with incredible damage building. That's 3 positives to 1 negative. Now, I'm no astrophysicist, but I do know that 3 is more than 1. Okay, I might have had to use a calculator, but that's besides the point. The point is that Axe has more overall positives than negatives in its kit. Now let's move on to reason number 2, which is general play rate. In the general population, Axe is quite popular. While it's only the 4th most used weapon by all ranks, it's the 2nd most used in Diamond, topped only by Gauntlets, and I think we all know exactly whose fault that is. Furthermore, 4 of the 8 most played legends in Diamond are Axe legends. Now, weapons that are played a lot are generally good. This would make sense, because if we're being honest here, half of Brawlhalla's player base are boosted by the same narrow selection of weapons and legends because of how good and easy they are. This is why the top played legends are almost always the same, being Scythe, Gauntlets, Lance, and Axe legends, and more recently, Spear. But of course, this is the entire player base we're talking about here. To get a better idea of what weapons are good, it's important to look at the highest ranked players and what they use. So, what's the highest ranked player using? Yeah. To absolutely nobody's surprise, it's a Taros player that's over 100 elo above the second highest. In fact, this player has won 679 of his 748 ranked games, making their win rate over 90%. A win rate that high is unbelievably rare with so many games played and such a high elo. The only people that come close to matching that win rate in his elo have played less than half of the games that this player has. Looking at the rest of the top 50 globally, 9 of them are Axe players. This may sound like a small amount, until you realize that the only weapons that appear more than Axe in the top 50 are Sword and Gauntlets, being 13 and 17 respectively. To be quite honest, I can't say I'm surprised to see these two having more than Axe, since they're the two most versatile weapons in the game, but I digress. It's pretty clear that both the general population and the highest ranked players use Axe quite a bit. However, the argument can be made that rank doesn't mean much of anything, and that people will often play what they find fun in ranked rather than what's actually good. This is a valid point, and in response to that, I want to move on to my final reason: the pro play rate. For a moment, I'd like for you to close your eyes and imagine yourself being a pro player in the top stages of a tournament. And if you're a pro player and you're watching this, imagine being yourself, I guess? I don't know. Anyways, if you're competing for potentially thousands of dollars, which mindset do you think you would have? A. Wow, I'm competing for thousands of dollars, so to give myself the best chances of winning, I'll play a legend with top tier weapons. Or B. Wow, I'm competing for thousands of dollars, so to give myself the worst chances of winning, I'll play a legend with low tier weapons. Obviously, I can't read your mind, but it's safe to assume you'd be thinking option A. So, if Axe is a bad weapon, then that would mean it'll have a low play rate in the top stages of tournaments, right? Well, let's take a look. Here's a graph for the weapon distribution of the top 8 in the Summer Championship of 2023.
Well, it might be top 3, but there's a large disparity between it and the second most played weapon, and it also was a while ago, so it's invalid.
Okay. Here's a graph for the weapon distribution of the top 8 in the Autumn Championship of 2023.
Well, it's still top 3, but it has several weapons trailing closely behind it in play rate, and also the championship isn't as competitive as the Royale, so it's invalid.
Okay. Here's a graph for the weapon distribution of the Round Robin in the Autumn Royale of 2023.
Well, it might be top 2 now, but this is only between 8 players, and also BCX is a much larger pool of pro players, and it's also more competitive, so it's invalid.
Okay, that's enough of me talking in that annoying voice. I actually don't have a weapon distribution graph for BCX since these were made by someone else and I could have made one myself since I was too busy literally being at BCX to make one. Also, shout out to Cage Brawlhalla on Twitter for making these graphs. Or at least, that was the case at the time writing this script, because I now have a top 8 weapon distribution for BCX, and surprise, surprise, Axe was the most played weapon. Not only that, but many of the players that used Axe dealt a majority, and in a few cases, all of their damage on the Axe. And although Axe didn't win BCX, it was used by both the second and third place winners. Now, before I conclude the video, I want to address a few counterpoints that I've seen many Axe apologists bring up. For one, I've seen people say that even in tournaments, people will play what they enjoy, even if that weapon isn't good. That would make sense until you look at examples of low tier weapons and how much they're used in pro play. For example, after Hammer was nerfed into oblivion following its reign in the heavy weapon meta, how many people did you see using it in the top level of tournaments? I don't think I saw a single person using Hammer until the nerfs began to get reverted. Or if you want a current example, how many people did you see using blasters during BCX? As someone who was there, I can tell you that I saw nobody using the blasters. Not just on the main stage or side stream, but also in the bracket. Now, I have talked to a few people that said they used blasters during BCX, like Sniped Socks and Notolata, which is completely fair, but from my own experience and also from what most people saw on stream, blasters were virtually non-existent. So it's safe to say that when a weapon is bottom tier, people tend to stay away from it. Another point people bring up is that play rate does not reflect a weapon's viability, and that's half true. Weapons that are underused by both the general player base and pros can be really good. For instance, Katars has had a pretty low play rate throughout the graphs that I showed earlier, but I think we can all agree that Katars is far from a bad weapon, and that's coming from someone whose secondary weapon is Katars, so you know I'm not being biased here. This is what happens when a weapon is slept on. However, the reverse does not work the same way. While the weapon can be slept on, a weapon that is used a ton by pros is always going to be good. It's not like they're mistakenly believing that a weapon they play a ton is good when it really isn't. Pro players know this game way better than you or I could ever understand it, and they compete for thousands of dollars. So as I stated earlier, why would they purposely choose a bad weapon? So while a low play rate doesn't necessarily mean a weapon is bad, a high play rate does mean the weapon is good. The last point I've seen people make is that Axe is only good on Taros and Zol because of the high damage. I will agree that Axe is definitely a lot better on those two, but that doesn't mean other Axe legends aren't good. Both Rayman and Ragnir were used a ton in BCX, and the third place winner, aka PR number 1 in EU, Godly, was using Rayman for almost the entire tournament. If Axe was truly only good on Taros and Zol, then it doesn't make sense for one of the best players in the world to be playing a different Axe legend during the tournament with the highest stakes of all. In conclusion, jeez, I sound like I'm writing an English paper. The truth about Axe is that it's a broken and top tier weapon. There's just no other way of looking at it, both from a practical and from a statistical standpoint. If you still think Axe is bad, then you're just being biased. Of course, you're entitled to your opinion, and I would love to hear it in the comments, but yeah, biased. Either way, I hope the balanced team saw how much Axe was used during BCX and will take appropriate action by nerfing it to be more balanced. Of course, knowing them, the nerfs will be like 2 less damage on Dare and 1 more frame of end lag on D-Light. Thanks, BMG.